20 years have passed since the outstanding Soviet breeder who linked his life died with the Akal-Tek breed, Vladimir Petrovich Shamborant. The last years of his life passed in Dagestan, where he left a good memory of himself. Now, the numerous students of him and contemporaries carry with them the knowledge, experiences, and memories of him. Vladimir Petrovich said that when he was a child, his father, who served in a dragoon regiment, he took him to military training and sat him in a cavalry saddle. Aminat Ahmedgadzieva, housekeeper of VP Shamborant, 1991 to 1996. The senior agent, or what his name was, well, an agent who came to them, the officer superior over the cavalry soldiers asked, "Whose boy is this?" greeted him, and he said, "Good boy, you will be the cavalryman." And Vladimir Petrovich says that he was. So when he started worshipping these horses, Vladimir Petrovich was born in Moscow on September 17, 1909, in the family of an officer, Count of Shamborant, descendant of an ancient French family. In 1923, there was a key event that largely determined the future of horse breeding Akal-Tek. During the All-Soviet exhibition, the young Vladimir Shamborant saw the Akal-Tek horse for the first time. It was none other than the famous Mele Kush, incredibly handsome, purebred, golden brown, which attracted thousands of spectators. Aishat Aliyeva, livestock specialist, Akal-Tek breeder. He was still a child. His father was dedicated to looking for horses for the cavalry. He was a great specialist. He could determine at a glance how much a horse was worth, what he could do, and what no. And he took him to the exhibition, where he saw Akal-Teke when he was still a child. And when he saw there the horse Akal-Teke, he fell in love. Mele Kush and Vladimir Shamborant were the same age. One of them was on top of the glory that only an Akal-Teke horse, everyone's favorite, whose nickname became a symbol of the breed. And the other was a 14-year-old boy who had just entered this adult world. The encounter with Mele Kush was lucky for both Vladimir Shamborant as for the oldest pure breed. Aminat Ahmedgadzieva, housekeeper of VP Shamborant, 1991 to 1996. There are people, they recharge you with their energy. You have nothing to do with this. You are in a totally different topic, but he will make sure you forget everything. You can listen without stopping what he says and how he says it. And even more, you want to ask questions. You feel like to know. Then there was war, injuries, and work at the Ashgabat stud, where, as Vladimir said Petrovich, expelled all the English blood, replaced the breeding studs, and he classified some of the breeding stock. During this period, reproductive successes were achieved outstanding. But in the 1950s, the country's leaders decided that breeding horses in the USSR had no economic prospects, and Shamborant had to save literally pet him and start over in Russia. That is, it was necessary to create an Akal-Tek apartment at the Tursk stud, where Vladimir Petrovich, he worked as a boss until 1970. Aishat Aliyeva, livestock specialist, Akal-Teki breeder. At the Tursk stud farm, he had difficult conditions. They began to complain about him because originally the stud farm was dedicated to breeding Arabian breeds. But later, they opened a Akal-Teki horse department, and he became the boss and paid more attention to Akal-Teki horses, which the Arabs, well, he seemed to be looking for a place to move. And since Dagestan was climatically more similar to Turkmenistan, he decided to bring it all here. En 1971, sobre la base del Sovkhoz estatal Budensky, se decidió crear la primera yeguada del país para la cría de caballos Akal-Teke de pura raza, y el núcleo de cría de la yeguada Tersk se transfirió a Dagestán. Para Shamborant, no había dudas entre quedarse en el antiguo lugar o estar con los Akalteque. Sin duda se fue. En aquel entonces ya tenía más de 60 años. Magomed Abib Japarov, coach. He was transferred here several times, then the Kaspisk administration. It was then when he was given a one-bedroom apartment in Kaspisk. That's when he moved there. En el nuevo lugar no había ni las condiciones adecuadas ni las tradiciones de cría de caballos. Todo se tenía que crear desde cero. Solo la perseverancia, la eficiencia excepcional, la paciencia y el amor de Vladimir Petrovich por la raza akalteque pueden explicar el hecho de que, después de todo, se creó la yeguada de Dagestán. Amanat Ahmedgadzieva, housekeeper of VP Shamborant, 1991 to 1996. There was no case of her kicking or biting him. Well, an absolutely stud unknown brought from the village. He silently approaches him. He feels this energy, although the man was weak, but the stallion felt this inner strength. And then he sniffs, opens nostrils, and he bravely stands below the horse's head and shows, "Look here, here," so that nothing happens to his lungs. He breathes intermittently. "It did you bring to ride?" "Yeah. Just take care of it." Selection requirements have not been reduced. To refresh the blood, it was bought in Turkmenistan a wonderful Srem stallion, who, together with the stallions brought from the Tersk stud farm, headed by Yulduz, determined the future breeding work. Amanat Ahmedgadzieva, housekeeper of VP Shamborant, 1991 to 1996. With so much passion, she talked about each horse. She knew about each horse what breed it was, where it was from. Came. She said, "It's an animal. You can't be offended because it didn't turn out to be what you wanted. We must take a different path to breed a good breed." Vladimir Petrovich could inspire anyone with a love for horses. Since the closest surroundings, from Kaspisk and Makhachkala, some hitchhiking and others walking, the students reached their teacher to absorb the knowledge that grandfather, as they called him, so generously transmitted to them, affectionately from his students to Shamborant. Aishat Alieva, livestock specialist, Akalteca breeder. He could take a photograph and describe a horse with so many details that I could imagine it, as if he were alive in front of me. In the end, when I put the photographs aside, she would sigh and say, "Honey, how I love my job." That is to say, he lived it, breathed it, and he transmitted everything in such a contagious way that it just, well, I don't know. In some kind, you would have to be made of stone to be able to remain indifferent. The animals in the yeguada could not be accessed without professional training. If you love to a horse, if you want to ride it, first learn to take care of it properly. The boss and everyone obeyed him. Some of Vladimir Petrovich's students found his vocation in equestrian sports. Others linked their lives to horse breeding, achieving high results in this area. But all of Shamborant's students, all without exception, they were united, and today they are united by one thing. They fell in love with horses forever, and this process is already irreversible. Ramazan Shamhalov, breeder, trainer. They were some of the best horses of Soviet times. Of course, it was difficult for them to compete with Kazakh prairie horses. But in general, these horses were very competitive because the cattle were very good, and in terms of breed, in the sense of breeding, and for racing, these horses were very strong. The horses of the Dagestan stud under the direction of Vladimir Petrovich, they were quickly declared horses with excellent agility performance. And soon the question arose whether the horses should be tested in their own republic. That's when the decision was made to build a racecourse in Makhachkala. Ramazan Shamhalov, breeder, trainer. The Akhaltek, who are in Russia, all came from here. The Akhaltek were brought to Russia by Shamborant from the Tursk stud farm, since it was decided to leave only one breed there, Arab, the one who grew up there originally. Shamborant was looking for a place in Russia in the Soviet Union and chose to come here. The coast, the sand, the nature here is more familiar to this breed. And all these horses that are in Russia, they all came from here. To except for some minuscule amount that someone brought from Turkmenistan. A little bit of Chagorta. No, it's that the horses that Shamborant took out were sent to Chagorta, and these horses went to Chagorta. Unlike the Dagestan stud farm that stopped operating on September 1, 2016, the Makhachkala Hippodrome stopped operating much earlier. At first, seeing all this devastation, you become discouraged and begin to think bitterly that everything touched by the genius of an outstanding world-famous breeder has already ceased to exist. But that is not the case. The results of the activity of a talented breeder are, first of all, the success of his students, and the victories in races or exhibitions of the offspring of the horses he bred. The Shamborant students gathered today to complement our story with his memories, remember his beloved teacher, and at the same time accompany our film crew to the places where they met Vladimir Petrovich, where they worked with him side by side and saw the successful results of his work. Nurmagomed Magomedov, coach. Even if the people who knew him were not from the breeding industry horses, but were the main trainers, specialists, and owners of horses, and in some way they were related to Vladimir Petrovich, and this relationship with the teacher guaranteed them a good start in life. I also consider myself very fortunate to have met, without exaggeration, an outstanding person. Who knew him without matter what he did next? I don't know if Shamborant educated correctly. And he also saw many things in life. He had problems and victories, he went through many difficulties, but he loved Dagestan very much, and he left Shamborant's school. I think that there is the school of Shamborant. With him, the breeding of Akhaltek horses in Russia began. It all started with him, and Dagestan is very lucky to have been chosen as the place to do this. The racecourse, too. According to the memoirs of his contemporaries, Vladimir Petrovich Shamborant was not only an excellent horse connoisseur, but also a good teacher. Furthermore, he managed to gather in the stud farm to a friendly team of enthusiasts just like him. He managed to create a school of Shamborant, raise and educate a whole generation of future horse breeders who, located in different parts of our country, continue their work today. Did meeting Vladimir Petrovich influence you in any way? Gadzi Karachev, teacher, coach. You can see it here. We're all busy, we're all working with horses. Nobody became a bricklayer, mechanic, or driver. We all work with horses. For my part, I am grateful to him. He infected us, in short. As he taught us Vladimir Petrovich, we probably couldn't transmit it anymore. We don't have that much patience. Wisdom, we are all very fast. And he was a measured person. He did everything clearly and planned. That's how he was. He knew. Some horse was being born there. He could wait a long time to some other horse to get something he had thought of. This is how he worked. Many of his students consider that they were very lucky in life to have met on his way to a professional like Vladimir Petrovich Shamborant. A man of culture, ancestral, extraordinary determination, and brilliant talent. Its openness and accessibility, they erased all age boundaries. It was not a burden for him to communicate with the youths. On the contrary, he generously shared his knowledge and experiences with others, youths. Ramazan Shamhalov, breeder, trainer. What usually happens? Young people do not want to sit with an older person once they have spoken and now they want to walk away. And he was such that we carried him with us in the front seat. His leg didn't bend. We put him in the front seat. He sat in the front, and it didn't matter where we went. To the city, to the races. He always did. We were carrying. The man was interesting, authoritative, and a fan of his work. And Makasharab Japarov, coach. We couldn't enter the barn without his permission. Everyone came up to ask permission. Was one more. Several neighbors gather under a tree to play cards, and he there we perceived as a family member. He was a good man. If he hadn't scolded us when we made mistakes, we wouldn't have gotten used to it. If you approach a horse and it doesn't clean, he won't let us go near that horse a second time. Now, thinking about what he taught us, really everything was useful to us in life. Magomedabib Japarov, coach. Especially this tedious riding in the riding arena, it seems like you can ride the horse now. Well, you can now take a walk along the coast. No, it will take everyone back to the riding arena. Did he do the training himself? Yes. He will stand in the middle, right shoulder forward, left shoulder forward, and ready. Throw the stirrups without reins. A boring ride, it seems. Because it is necessary, one has to work. What are you doing there? He looks like an old man mumbling something, but it turns out that all this is necessary. It was a difficult time for Vladimir Petrovich Shamborant. He was forced once again to start his work from the beginning. At the same time, it was a unique time for those who were lucky enough to be by his side, to learn from him, those who today are considered his followers of him, who had the opportunity to learn about the oldest and most noble. Furthermore, the opportunity to communicate with Shamborant himself was a great luck. The years spent together with Vladimir Petrovich predetermined human development and professional of those around him. Aishat Alieva, livestock specialist, Akal Teka breeder. She taught us how to feel a horse. She instilled in us this sensitivity towards horses. I don't know how did it happen. If telepathically, or if he somehow infected us or something like that. But there is instinct, then there is no progress in this work, and there will be no result. I would like to point out that Godzi has a phenomenal sensitivity towards horses, can see some terrible horse, take it and turn it into a marvel. Petrovich's secret was that he knew how to provide these properties and qualities to people who were not indifferent to this horse world. Since Shamborant is no longer with us, each of us organized something. The Ramir Hazim's livestock is a merit of Ramadan. Here you are, 2 have been formed studs, are now alive and functioning. Ishat and I toil in the stud farm Ibrisa, the Dagestan stud farm, very powerful. Khabib has a large livestock farm independent. The Japarov brothers, who also compete and not only compete, but which are also ahead of many great stud farms. That is, this is the result of our knowledge, of our life with Shamborant. Since the early 80s, from horses bred at the Dagestan stud farm in Russia, new promising lines for breeding the Akhal-Tek breed have been created. They were created mainly by students of Vladimir Petrovich. Already retired, in an old age, the famous breeder maintained contact with those close to him in spirit and interests. Having a home in Moscow, he did not move there. In her old age, when she had the chance to go to France, when they received him there, they had a military parade in front of him. The great-grandson received the name from him. The people, his relatives, invited him to stay there, to move there. He never left. In general, what did he have here? He had nothing, but he stayed in Dagestan. No, he thought I was Dagestani and he stayed here. Even for him, not to lie. Even in his passport when they changed it, when they still included nationalities, his passport said Dargan or Kumyk, not to lie. Even his nationality was written on his passport. He didn't move anywhere. Even when you are already in old age, when you've done everything you can, what do you have left? He could go to France, to the homeland of his ancestors. That's how it was. They took him to France, and a month later he was back in Kaspiysk. "What are you back, Grandpa? What am I going to do there?" was his response. "I didn't need anything. These horses were all I had." He brought them from Turkmenistan, they arrived at the Tursk stud farm, and from there to here. He dedicated his entire life to these horses, and the final point was Dagestan. This is where he is buried. To what extent did the people around you understand the value of the relationship? Magomed Abib Japarov, Coach Well, probably like with most artists and important people, you understand when you lose this value. People who were really interested and they knew the value. I'm absolutely sure that in those days I understood a lot less. Aishat, who had a much closer relationship, Haji, Ramadan. As you know, Ramazan, the origin and lineage of these horses, this has never reached me. Whatever you do, you think you can do it. But no, there is always something wrong. Because there is no limit to perfection. It molded you to become an ideal. When you've grown up, that's when you understand it. We begin to understand to parents only when we ourselves become parents. All these parental prohibitions, don't go there, you can't go there. You understand all this when you become a father. Probably. Here he was, and in childhood they understood him less than now. What did you aspire to be here? Conserve and improve what is there. She had a dream. Already at the age of 80, she said that in 20 years she would create a Dagestan breed group, preserve the color, type, and beauty of the Akhal-Tek, and create a separate group of horses in parallel with the Akhal-Tek. Without spoil the breed, she wanted to create a Dagestan racial group so that there was a horse strong and powerful. Aishat Aliyeva, livestock specialist, Akhal-Teki breeder. I personally read a letter from a German thanking him for the horses he raised. The horses from the stud farm were sold at auctions twice a year. First, Moscow stud farm. This was the only profitable industry in this Sovkhoz, Gudensky. And it was the German who sent a letter and said that these horses and breeders should have a monument during his lifetime. These horses were very valuable and of high quality in their performance. And the gene pool he created, Azerbaijan was full of horses of the Dagestan variety. Moscow region and Moscow also started their activities breeding Akhal-Tek horses precisely from the Petrovich gene pool. It, which he created and accumulated. Being close to the teacher, asking for advice, was of particular importance for the students of Shamborant. And it does not matter whether it was a professional activity or simply some situation in life. According to what he says, Vladimir Petrovich also valued this relationship, but the famous breeder was even more attached to his pets. Already seriously sick, he refused to fly to Moscow for treatment because he was on the eve of the careers. On May 9, 1996, Vladimir Petrovich Shamborant died.